I'm your host, Jess Carter, and on this episode of Data Driven Leadership, we're taking a closer look at how you begin to think about organizational data transformations. More specifically, we're exploring what it looks like for an organization to start a data transformation project and generate real value quickly. To help me solution on the spot is Michael Tantrum, a National Sales Director at Resultant. Hey, Michael.
Hey, it's Jess. Great to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Michael, will you tell me a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So I've always been interested in the use of data to help people make decisions. And in fact, my very first analytic database I ever created was in 1989, long before we called them data warehouses. In fact, we called them decision support systems back then. So my whole career has been helping people build and use data to make real change and how businesses have run. Sometimes that's been public sector, making changes in how healthcare is delivered to people. Sometimes that's been private sector, how to maximize profit and other factors. But yeah, that's been my passion for 30 years now.
That's awesome. Very cool. Well, glad to have you solution on the spot with me today. So The segment we're going to take on next is a data transformation solution on the spot. So here we go. The scenario that we're going to be in together is we've walked into a client meeting at their request, and they've said, hey, we've hired some really bigwig, super smart companies. They've given us all these reports on data transformation for our organization. We know we need to transform our organization. We know we need data to drive decisions. But the reports were not driving meaningful insight on how to take actions to clearly change. So while valuable, we don't know what to do. We don't know where to start. And so they've called us in and they want us to help them figure out where to begin a real meaningful data transformation.
Yeah, that's a real common problem. To take something from a theoretical academic idea, set of PowerPoint slides and other visualizations, and actually create the real artifacts to start the project and get it going. And there's a lot of decisions to be made, and at Resultant we have opinions, and it's based on real experience. And so the way I'd solution with that client is firstly, the first question is always, do you have investments you've already made, typically in technology, that we have to make use of? If you do, we'll start there. If you don't, and you've got gaps, and we can talk about reference architectures, what are the things you need to get to the start line? And so we'll help fill in some gaps, some good tool choices and ideas like that. And then we then say, what does it look like to provide value? And the way I like to do it is I take a prototype iterate approach. We'll take the first issue, your first question from your business user, and we're going to build a prototype. And that might take, a few hours, a day, something like that. And we're going to say, here's my prototype. Now that you can see it, let's refine it, and we'll iterate on that prototype. And it's a great way to get that first piece ready in production. It shows how does the technology work, but it also shows culturally, how do the people work? How do your people, how do our people work together? Where are the knowledge gaps? Where are the skills gaps? How do you take a request which is, I kind of want something like this, which you can't build because it's not, it's not firm, and how do we refine that into something that says, here's a real artifact? And so prototype iterate is a great way for us to help people get to the start and then get that first step across the line.
I think that's really important too, because it's really easy to read these reports, and there's so much content out there about how to do these things. I think it's really hard to actually put together an implementation strategy and demonstrate value. And I think sometimes that's because if you do take that on, people are looking at the long-term rollout. And to your point, to just take a piece where it's like, where's some real pain? What's one instance where you really need data-driven insights? That buy-in and the insight you generate to understand how the rest of the project may play out and what kind of value they're looking for, and the quick feedback about what's the quality of their data and their systems. There's so much you learn really, really quickly there. And it's not overwhelming, and you don't have a C-suite sitting at the top, tapping their watch, waiting to see when the whole thing is done. There's like iterative value too, not just iterative work, right? I think that's a great idea.
One of the biggest challenges that people find is they say, what are we going to build? And so when the chief data officer or the CIO says, right, you have permission to start this program, and then everybody says, okay, well, business users, what are your requirements? What is the scope? And this is a great source of anxiety for the business units, for the consumers of our data, because they don't actually know. Now, it's not like a transaction system. If I'm going to process an invoice, there's one or two ways I can process an invoice. But if I want to analyze an invoice, there's like infinite ways. And so if you say to a business user, how do you want to analyze this invoice? They look at you and there's this fear in their eyes and they say, I'm not sure I can define it because I don't know yet. I know the first question I need to solve, but I don't know the 6 questions that are going to come after that. And so this requirements gathering exercise is usually a huge stumbling block and a big thing that prevents people from starting. And so working with business users on that is a big challenge.
Well, there's a maturity in them, right? It's kind of what you're saying too. Sometimes the design is only as good as the designer, and sometimes when they've been used to working with not enough data, not timely data, when you start to say, okay, give me all your requirements for a future state that's this big thing, it's really overwhelming, and they're not sure what the art of the possible is. How much can I ask for here? And so I think if you can, to your point, if you can start to understand where they're at, what their data literacy is, and we can start to show them what they could have and get a sense for their future prototype and the way that they want to mature it, you tend to see the organization mature around their data literacy too. And I think that's really exciting because you're actually sharpening the organization and their human capital too. It's not just about this cool data infrastructure. A data transformation is about the human capital who can better use that data too, right?
Yeah, we build these data warehouses, these analytic environments for one reason only, and that is for our end users to manage their organizations better. And all too often the IT organization loses sight of that. They see their purpose for being is to build this beautiful, elegant, technologically beautiful solution. And yet out here my business users are saying, hey, what about me? I need something now. If I don't have something this week or this month, I cannot respond to changing business conditions. Or maybe it's public sector. COVID has hit and we have to do something now. I can't wait 2 years. And so elegance is the enemy. The perfect is the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
And the delicate balance is business or the consumers of our data say, I need it right now. But IT says, but you need it right. And so that's an inherent tension we always work with.
Let me ask you this. How do you know, so if we're playing through this, we kind of get the client to agree on a prototype. How do we give them a sense for value of the prototype or impact? Like if it's a good data transformation, if we're on a good path, how would you give them comfort in that, in a sense of success?
Well, the great thing is your users, they will tell you. And so when I talk about prototype and iterate, this is a very collaborative exercise. It's what I call conference room development. And so as I build my prototype, and particularly when I iterate my prototype, I have my user or an authorized representative of my user who can approve decisions on their behalf sit beside me, and when they see the data, I put it up on the big screen and I say, here's what I think you just said to me. They've drawn me a picture on a whiteboard with stick figures and lines and what have you. I've built the prototype and they look at the data and they say, that's not quite right, try this. And as they say try, I build it in front of them. And they say, oh, I thought this went with this, but it doesn't seem to, does it? The data doesn't give it. Try this. And so try, iterate. And then they say, stop. What you've got on the big screen right there, that's what I want. That's when you know you've got value, because the person who's going to use it has just told you. Right. Wrap that up, put a bow on it, move it into a productionized context, pick the next item. We've already given value and we're on week 1 of the project.
If you look back at this client and you say, hey, I've watched people do these for 30 years. Here are the 1 to 3 things I just beg you to not do. Like, as we think about a data transformation, as you get started, please avoid these pitfalls. What's your Michael Tantrum soapbox of like, oh my gosh, for the love, like, please don't do these things?
Please do not insist on your business users trying to give you a complete set of everything that they're going to need in their project. The conversation goes like this. You want some analytics. Okay, give me a requirements document, give me a scoping document. And they will say, I don't know what that looks like. And you say, no document, no build. And they say, okay, all right, let's play hardball. You give me everything. And you say, well, you can't have everything. And so you lock yourselves in a room and you negotiate for 3 months and you come out. And in fact, in one project, they came out 18 months later with this document. And they said, right, this is what we think we need. And then they came to me and they said, right, we've now finally got our requirements document. Can you build this for us? And I took their document and I put it to one side and I said, right, so tell me what you want to do. And they looked at me with horror and they said, we've just spent 18 months doing that. And I said, yes, and that is, I guarantee that what we build will not look like that. Because what you need today is what you need today, not what you thought you needed academically, theoretically, 18 months ago.
Wow.
So please don't try and define up front everything you need, because I tell you this, there is an axiom of analytics. Your users don't know what they don't know, and they will ask for changes, and you do need to be able to respond to changes irrespective of how well you have scoped the project.
Right, right. Well, and you've already said don't have a siloed IT department run the initiative, right? It's got to be a collaborative initiative that is driven by business outcomes. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Absolutely. And a traditional IT project, particularly when it relates to analytics, is a very contentious exercise. Your users ask, IT builds, you come back 6, 12 months later and you say, here you go. They look at you and they say, who are you? All right, let me look at it. Okay, I remember telling you about this. Do I like it or not? So it's very much I ask, you do we accept? Not very conducive to good relationships, and all it creates is this tension on the business side saying, every time I ask, you guys are too slow, you never give me what I want. If we turn it into what we've been talking about, it becomes collaboration. Now we're on the same side of the table, both looking at the problem together, not looking across the table at each other saying, you're the reason I can't do my job.
It's amazing. So try to avoid the transactional nature that these can kind of feel like. And then let me ask you this. This is super interesting to me. There are moments on a data transformation project that are really exciting and garner a lot of celebration and like emotional excitement. And there are probably moments throughout a data transformation that are highly disappointing, frustrating, discouraging. Can you, if I'm a potential client, can you walk me through what you would perceive as like preparing my organization for some emotional intelligence around what are the seasons of this kind of rollout that are probably going to be difficult, and what are some seasons that are probably going to be pretty exciting?
The excitement is always when you are able to achieve insights that you had an instinct were there, that you had if you're a good business manager, you kind of know what works and what doesn't. If you're a commercial property manager, you know what makes my property work well or not. Or if I'm a public health expert, I know works well. But to suddenly have data say, yeah, your instincts were right, and we can actually do this, and now I have justification for why my instincts were good, everyone gets very excited about that. The downside is what happens when we can't do it, and what happens, we get into the project and we just realize the data is not there. We thought we might have access to data and it's not there. Maybe there's security issues of getting access to it. Maybe the data quality is so terrible we just can't draw insights.
Yeah.
And that can be really disappointing, particularly if you take a traditional approach to a project, because you find out at the 11th hour. And it's very expensive and very traumatic. And so again, I keep coming back to this idea of prototype, iterate. If I'm going to fail, I want to fail fast. I don't want to build this great sense of anticipation to let you down, because that just reinforces the problems we just talked about. IT really can't deliver what I need. See, they just proved it. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. And the other element here, I think, is we tend to be the builders or the supporters of some of this collaboratively with our client. I think understanding that like any company that promises that you'll have these amazing insights who hasn't looked at your data yet, there's some smoke and mirrors going on. We don't know until we get into the prototyping. And then to your point, to fail fast is it's a lower sunk cost if we find out that the data isn't there, that the quality isn't there, that it's not statistically significant to drive outcomes or rely on for key data-driven decisions. And we can pivot more quickly. So you're getting more value out of the same cost and length of engagement because you're learning more quickly how to pivot towards the most valuable things that we can do.
Yeah. And the failures don't become expensive mistakes. They become a learning opportunity to inform how to do it better.
Yeah. Yeah. What about like, as we tend to help build some of this and create the skeletal structure and the human capital knowledge to maintain it, walking away after the infrastructure is there, do you perceive from clients that you've had over the years that it's pretty easy to maintain a data-driven organization or a data transformation kind of post-transformation, or are there some key areas that make sense to pay attention to?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they focus on the technology and they forget the people side. A lot of people have come into analytics from a very traditional viewpoint, and a modern approach to analytics requires agility, it requires flexibility, it requires blurring a lot of the traditional roles. In the past, I was a data engineer, I was a business analyst, I was a technical writer. Now, in a modern world, we blur the relationships. As a data engineer, I might have to talk to my users. As a business analyst, I might have to get involved in some of the technical aspects. And so for people who embrace the change, this is great. The world moves on. They're excited about the modern approach to analytics. For those people who say, no, my career is a business analyst. I trained as a business analyst. That's all I want to do. Those people are very threatened by this. And so how you manage the people aspect is just as important as how you manage the technical aspect.
That's amazing. Well, Michael, I think you get an A+ for Solution on the Spot. So thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jess Carter. And don't forget to follow the Data-Driven Leadership wherever you get your podcasts and rate and review us, letting us know how the data topics are transforming your business. We can't wait for you to join us on the next episode.